what you say to your child actually impacts them in ways you cannot imagine. As a child goes through their life and they hear the same message being repeated over and over again, what tends to happen is the child trusts you, the child believes you, and the child thinks that you are the parent, you are the authority, you are the caretaker, and of course what you're going to give them is going to be something that's going to be protective for them. The problem is that very often what we hear and what we repeat in the negative actually impacts the child, because the child hears this thing over and over again until it becomes their mind, their emotions, their behaviors, and they start acting it out, they start living it out. And what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy, it actually happens in parenting. We prophesize in the negative, and the children, they hear it, they repeat it, and then eventually what they will do is that they will become it. And in this episode, I want to dive into what you can do to disrupt that, to stop it, and to create the total opposite. You have the power to nurture and shape your child, your family, in ways that you cannot imagine. But in this episode, we're going to dive into it and you're going to learn. But before we do that, I want to tell you that if you have not joined me on one of my live trainings, you want to come and join me. I'm running one in a couple of weeks. Go to themuslimlifecoach.org/mastermind. Join me on the training. It's live. You're going to love it. And I'm going to teach you how to create the most amazing life in the shortest possible time. Let's dive in. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to this week's episode of the podcast. So in this podcast, I want to dive into fundamentals of creating a family and nurturing a family in a way that will actually help them to flourish. You get to have wonderful relationships with them and they get to have a wonderful life and future. This is so important because it is created in the home. It is created in the mind first, and actually it plays out in your life. And I want to give you an example of this. I want to give you two examples. One example, one of my clients, as they've gone through their life, what's happened to them is that they were raised by a parent who was very, very critical. And the parent who was critical actually was trying to save the child, trying to prevent the child from being impacted by, what they perceived as a threat in society. You're going to have an awful future if you do these things. And, as parents, we become very anxious about our children's futures. So it's very understandable. So the parent is actually trying to protect the child. Anyway, my student, what happens is that she hears this message repeat over and over again as she grows up. As she hears it, what she starts to do is that she internalizes it. She starts to believe what's actually being said to her. And the reason that she believes it is because you, the parent, you're the confidant, you're the counselor, you're the advisor, you're the mentor. You're the one that is actually helping your child to nurture them, to help them prepare for life. And so what's happening to her is that she's hearing these messages, and the parent, who's actually trying to prevent the harm and actually looking out for her, is repeating these messages, but they're negative messages. And if you imagine, you keep telling your child, let's just say you're doing this to your child, you keep telling your child that, if you do this, you're gonna lose, you're gonna fail, you're gonna become a failure, and I don't want you to become a failure. But that part, I don't want you to become a failure, that's in your mind. You don't actually say it, but you say you're gonna fail. And your child keeps on hearing the same message. So this is what happened to my client. So she hears this over and over again. And it's not like she heard this forever, but she heard it for a little while the parent was anxious, while the parent was worried. And what that did was that it left this belief in her mind. Now, this belief, I want you to understand what belief is. Belief is like the thoughts that you keep on thinking over and over again. It came from a trusted source. You believed it. And now what's happening is that you've got this on repeat in your mind. Every time she came to, a junction in her life where she had to make a decision. Now, imagine this. What plays out in the back of her mind is, if you do this, you're going to fail. And if you do this, you're going to be safe. And so even though the parent is no longer saying this to her, what she's doing is she's repeating it over and over again in her mind. And so she will make a decision now at that junction in her life. She can take a right or she can take a left. But what she decides is she's going to take a left because that seems safe, right? And because she's got in her mind that if I do X, Y, Z, I'm going to fail. And one of the problems in this is that every decision she makes as she goes through her life, every major decision that she makes as she goes through her life, what will happen is that she will use this as a background belief to make a decision, make an informed decision about what's going to be right for her or wrong for her. Ultimately, what's going to happen is that she is going to be impacted. She's going to be impacted, and it's going to actually change the way that she experiences her life until she creates a result in her life that one day she wakes up and she sees her life and she thinks, I don't like my life. Now, I want to backtrack a little. I want you to understand what's happened here. Think about this. She began as a child being told that if you do these things, you're going to fail. You're going to be a failure. That's how she internalized it. I'm going to be a failure if I do these things. And if you do, anything other than that, then you're not going to fail. And so even though that's the unsaid, what happens is that she goes through her life trying to not fall into the things that she feels is going to create failure in her life. And that means that every good opportunity that came up in her life, she turns it down. Every opportunity that could possibly lead to the success that she wants, she turns it down. Maybe even when she comes to deciding on who her husband is, like she decides to take the safe option, the best option, right? Which is obviously a good thing to do, right? But in doing that, then after the marriage, she goes back questioning, well, I only got married to you because you were the safe option. And it's almost like this programming in her mind is playing out at every major junction in her life. So you can imagine, whether she makes the right decision or the wrong decision, she's always going to second guess herself. She's always going to think that there is a problem inherently in life because she's always up against the failure. And this is what we do to our children. So many of us do this to our children in that we want to try and avert a problem from happening in their lives. And what we do is that we fearmonger. We start to tell them about how they're going to become failures and what they're going to do. And we put that on repeat. And if you put that on repeat, what happens, even if you said it once or twice or thrice and you never said it again, but if your child internalizes that and repeats that to themselves in their mind over and over again, they will be traumatically impacted by those words, even though you only said it a few times. But those words, they play out over and over again. And so what happens is that the child then grows up not trusting themselves. The child then grows up always fearing failure. And actually, you need failure as a part of your life so you can actually grow. Because if you're always fearing failure and you never take the options in life that could possibly give you failure, then what's going to happen is that you'll never take a risk. And if you never take a risk, then you'll always take the safe bet, the safe option. And the safe option is usually the least progressive, the least yield producing, the least result producing. It's the safe bet. It means that you don't get much. And so when we want to create a big life, you need big belief. And this is what this comes back down to. If you want to help your child to not get stuck in this, then you have to help them to create big beliefs. And you do not create big beliefs in your child by actually showing them all of the failures that they're going to create. In fact, what we want to do is we want to drill it into their mind that they are going to be successful. You want to drill it into their mind that they are going to be from the people of success, dunya and akhirah. Like, you want them to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always give them the best. And to do that, you have to drill in the belief that is positive. You have to actually believe in them first. So in order for you to actually raise your child, there's two things that must be done in order to give them the best opportunities. Number one, you've got to believe in them first. Number two, you've got to drill in those beliefs, and it's got to be something that we repeat and we put it on repeat. The more it is on repeat, the more the child believes it, because you are the counselor, you are the mentor. And as I went through, look, as I've gone through my own parenting challenges, like I realized that a lot of times, like what drove me were my fears and anxieties about the future and how it's going to be, awful, it's going to be terrible. And the reality is, you and I, we don't know the future. We don't know the future. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, about the shaitan. Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ash-shaytanu ya'idukum al-faqra wa ya'murukum bil-fahsha. Like in this verse, Allah is teaching us a universal principle. This universal principle is that the shaitan is going to whisper. Number one, he's going to whisper. Number two, you're not going to see where it's coming from. Number three, that whispering, the whole purpose of this whispering is to shape and control your behaviors, because Allah talks about like He's going to command you with fahsha, like command you with evil deeds, like to do bad things, right? And like illicit things. But ultimately, what we take and what we learn from this is that He is going to do this for a reason, in order to shape your behavior. But how does He do it? He does it by striking fear into you. So I want to take a couple of lessons from this. Like, number one, do not strike fear into your children's heart and make them believe that they're going to be failures. Do not strike fear into their hearts and make them believe that if they don't obey you and be like this pristine, perfect child, that they're going to be total losers, because that's not true, right? Because you could get it wrong, right? And if you imagine my client whose parent got it wrong, the child, now the adult, has had to live with that for years and years and years, and it shaped their lives, right? Shaped their decisions. And so what that does is that it shapes the behaviors. And what we want to do is we want to change the behaviors. We want to create behaviors that actually give us tremendous results, right? So what you want to do is that you want to not strike fear into their hearts. You do not want them to be raised upon fear. You want to raise them upon like taqwa. Taqwa is not fear, the kind of fear that's debilitating. It's the kind of fear that makes you love Allah. That's a very different fear, right? So the thing is, I want you to imagine this, like you're not going to be using this, like, because if you do, then like essentially you're going to create a result for them that they're not going to want, and they're going to resent you for it. And you don't want it as a parent. I don't want it as a parent. So when I realized this, then number one, I needed to realize that one, the waswas of the shaitan, the negativity is always there. So I acknowledge that. But what I don't do is that I don't follow it, right? Like, of course, it's easy to follow. And so what you have to do is you have to, one, turn back to Allah. Two, you have to trust Allah. Three, you have to nurture the kind of beliefs that actually help you and your child to grow tremendously. And this is belief. This is positive stuff. This is not the negative stuff. This is not the fear-inducing stuff. This is belief that creates excitement, positivity, and this is really going to help you to help your child. That's so important to understand. And number four, you got to have this on repeat. Like, take lesson from the waswas of the shaitan. The waswas of the shaitan is that they don't give up. Like, they don't give up. They just keep on coming back. That means you can't give up. If you give up, then you give into the negativity. If you give up, you give into your negative thoughts, your negative, catastrophizing of the future. If you do the belief work, if you believe strong enough, then that will change everything for you and your child. It will help you to raise a family that will actually flourish. Belief will shape you and your child, and ultimately it will change your future and your child's future. And when they grow up, insha'Allah, they will become the person that they choose to be. And if you nurtured them on the most positive beliefs, and you didn't do it with fear and threatening them and always giving them a hard time, what's going to happen is that they're going to love the creator of the heavens and the earth. They're going to love your creator. And when you tell your child to worship Allah, they're going to do it because they love you and they love Allah. And that is totally different to when we do it through fear and traumatizing them. And listen, I know that none of us parents, no one was born with a handbook, parenting handbook. And so what you want to do is you want to really understand this, really implement this and implement it into your life so that you can actually create results that you will love, that you will enjoy, that your children will enjoy. And inshallah, I'm going to leave you on that. Jazakum'Allahu. Hey guys, thanks for listening in on this podcast. If you are ready to up-level your mind, emotions, and relationships using a Quranic solution, you're going to love this podcast and what we are going to be sharing over the coming episodes. This is the most fundamental training that you're going to go through in your life. You can use it to transform your life, your mental and emotional health, your relationships, how you parent, how you are in your marriage, and truly your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are loving this and you want more of it, click subscribe, or if you want one of our free trainings, go to themuslimlifecoach.org and sign up for the free training. You're going to love it. I'll see you on the inside. Jazakum'Allahu khair.